Mitsubishi Lancer EVO VI. In a world where big air is often confused with better, cult cars sometimes begin to lose the plot as manufacturers fiddle with the formula. The latter-day Subaru WRXS and Mitsubishi Lancer EVOs are vastly different to the cars that created the legend back in the 1990s. Both now weigh more and occupy more real estate than the svelte originals. In the case of Mitsubishi, the latest version of the EVO X, has even swapped its clutch pedal for a clutchless manual gearbox in the Hero version, a move that should tell you a lot about where Mitsubishi is taking the car in a marketing sense. Which leaves the earlier EVOs as the cars that are likely to become collectibles and those which still fire the imagination of the faithful as opposed to the trend watchers. The Lancer EVO VI of 2001 is a perfect example. It was from the old school of cars that not only felt fast but were fast. And attitude? The EVO VI had that in spades. The super responsive 2.0-litre turbocharged engine drove all four wheels in what has become a classic driveline layout when it comes to covering ground quickly. Of course, in those days, the EVO model formed the basis of Mitsubishi's World Rally Championship contenders, so the road-going versions were the real thing. It's a crazy car to drive, with ferocious acceleration, tenacious cornering and a ride so firm that it could shake a monkey out of a tree. It's noisy, too, and with the short gearing in the 5-speed manual gearbox, the EVO VI is no interstate cruiser. Some of the detail stuff is strange, too. The stereo, for instance, is operated by buttons the size of microdots, and the body kit might well do its bit in a rally car at speed, but it's a crazy collection of plastic on the street. Narrow, focused and sharp are all words that apply to the EVO VI. If that's your agenda, then there's not much else around that will hit the same notes. For some people, the whole experience will simply amount to nervous energy on the wheels. But if you're one of the ones who gets the EVO, it is borderline addictive. Another reason the EVO VI is such a desirable model is that somehow, the 100 cars that Mitsubishi Australia imported into the country were all from the batch of Tommy Macon edition cars, built to celebrate the WRC successes of the Works team's Finnish rally driver. The, as it became known, was actually a bit special even compared with other EVOs, but it's here that you have to be a bit careful when buying. The two things you don't want to accidentally buy are a grey import or a car that's been crashed and repaired. So check the compliance plate under the body for proof that the car was an Australian delivered, and then check for some specific bits and pieces that only that had. The front seats should be special recliners that were specific to the model. The same goes for the steering wheel and gear knob. Cars were only available in either red, white, silver or black, so a different color could be either a crashed and repainted car, or a rig. Check the brakes. That model should have big rotors and calipers, the latter with Brembo stamped on them. When it comes to grey, or private, imports, the trick is not to pay too much for one. They're worth less than a locally delivered car, so it's a simple question of getting the price right, because there's otherwise nothing wrong with a grey. And while there's a big price difference between a grey and a local in some makes and models, when it comes to an EVO VI there's less in it than some. Beyond the question of authenticity, there are also some important mechanical checks to be made. The first would be the tires. The EVO VI used Z-rated tires thanks to its high-speed potential, but some owners may have switched to lesser tires when replacement time came around. That's bad news because it will compromise the car's grip in corners, which is, after all, one of its highlights. The driveline is a tough customer, but any piece of equipment that invites abuse like an EVO VI can go wrong. In the Lancer's case, the standard clutch is a fuse. Hammered over time, the clutch can eventually give up the ghost and fail, and it's a pretty big job to put right. Check the shuddering on takeoff that indicates clutch wear, while any slip suggests the clutch is already due for replacement. At least the clutch will sacrifice itself so the gearbox doesn't die young, but we've seen some cars that exhibit worn transmissions as well. Listen for grounches on upshifts that mark the death of synchro mesh rings and point to a hard previous life. The motor is strong and should last well, provided it's been treated properly along the way. Most mechanics who knew their EVOs recommend a diet of semi-synthetic oil, changed at 5,000 kilometer intervals. The service book should tell all. During the test drive, listen for a whistling noise as the turbocharger spins up under load. All turbos make some sort of whistling, but it shouldn't be loud enough to be heard above all else. If it is, the turbo is probably on the way out. The other thing we'd be truly wary of is an EVO with a lot of modifications. All cars can be improved upon, but something like an EVO that's been tuned for more performance really has to make you stop and wonder. Bigger wheels and tires and a louder exhaust might be okay, although they probably won't make the car any better, but a tuned engine with lots more power would make us look elsewhere. And besides, at that point, it's not an original anymore, is it? Originally launching at a mighty $80,000, lower prices for subsequent versions of the EVO pulled prices down quickly. These days, finding one of the original 100 is possible but may take a while grey imports are much more common and easier to get hold of.